wattles, as we call it in Haida, has been in practice long before contact up and down the coast, from Alaska down to Washington, for many generations. It is our Supreme Court. Wattles is our word for potlatch.
In October of 2018, we went up to Heidelberg, Alaska to participate in a potlatch or a Gyaa Isdlaa that my father was hosting up there with his wife, Terry Lynn. My father tells stories about in the old times when they traveled directly from Old Masset to Heidelberg and they would take the boat. So there is a close connection between those two communities geographically.
In the old days, paddling canoe would take about 17 hours. And all the ancient villagers, as the population dwindled, the survivors moved to a new location called Heidelberg. So Heidelberg is really made up of, I think, about 6 villages.
My father was born in Heidelberg. And so I think for him, it was a really big deal to co-host this event with Terry Lynn in Heidelberg. And I think that a lot of people will think that it's sort of this big party, but really it served a huge purpose. And so a distinction is that when we have a potlatch, it's always for a specific purpose. So the difference, kind of, if we think about a feast, there are lots of different reasons why we might have a feast, but a potlatch, there are specific protocols. And I think one way to think about it is that it is an actual ceremony.
I'm going to begin with an ancient song from Skidiat. It's the host welcome song to the house. You may remain seated. Thank you.
And those attending have an important role. They witness the business that is conducted, and they can be called upon in the future to say that on this date, this certain business was conducted, and it was conducted right, and that is how our oral histories are carried on into the future, is through the potlatch. And in that sense, it is a court.
I remember being at a Nutronok potlatch. A friend of mine was hosting it, and his uncle got up and spoke. He bellowed it out to the guests. If anybody has anything wrong to say about what's happening tonight, I want you to say it here, not after you leave the hall.
It happens to be here in our own home, and I'm just glad that the kids have continued.
Potlatches are a place to bring out our history. They bring us back to certain time periods, certain moments in our history when we acquired the right to wear a certain crest.
They were either earned through warfare, or sometimes crests are claimed through an experience. For example, my dad's clan, the Gyaa, the story is from an elder in Heidelberg. One day, a person from the Yaklenis was down on the beach at low tide, and he was taking care of nature, is how she said it. So, and when he was done, he could hear a sound, and it sounded like a chant. So he went to explore what it was, and there was a shark in the last throes of its life. Like it got caught in outgoing tide, and he pushed it out to safety, and since then took it as their crest.
And so potlatches are a place to bring out those privileges. I like to use the word privilege instead of right because a privilege can be taken away. And so I personally may have a privilege to wear a certain crest, and my clan has those privileges. And I might be privileged to have responsibilities to certain areas. If I don't uphold those responsibilities, then I lose that privilege. It's very different from a right in Canadian society, where you purchase a right to own a certain property, and that's your property to do whatever you want with it until the end of time. But our privileges carry with them responsibilities. They're not outright rights, but they're a responsibility to take care of the place, and that's where art becomes really important because it ties us back to the place, it ties us back to Haida Gwaii, and it ties us back to our responsibilities to take care of those islands. But on this date, this was a very different kind of potlatch. This wasn't a potlatch where someone brings out all of their rights and responsibilities and have people affirm that. Instead, it was a gifting to the community new privileges, the privilege to display certain crests on a dance screen. And so it's a very unusual and very unique kind of potlatch.
There were a few clans from Heidelberg that there's no identification marker for that clan. So I decided to commit to giving a dance screen to each clan. And so the potlatch really gave meaning to that knowledge. I commissioned several artists to do the dance screens. Ben Davidson, Tyson Brown, Corey Savard, Reg Davidson, myself, TJ Young. Quite often, in the old days, they gave out blankets, they gave out objects. But in this case, the dance screen was the object.
Our history is that the Canadian government enacted the potlatch prohibition to keep us from assembling in large numbers so that we could then formulate broader strategies to bring forward the issue of Indigenous title and Haida title. They wanted to stop that whole social cohesion that kept us together through the potlatch.
Because the potlatch ban began in the late 1800s, I had this sort of belief that it had sort of taken place a long time ago. And so as I was working on the book, I had this moment where I realized that my father was alive during this potlatch ban. He was there as a boy.
In the potlatch and feast experience, there was nothing. We weren't allowed to sing our songs, we weren't allowed to feast, we weren't allowed to potlatch, we weren't allowed to talk about our history, but that happened underground. It happened through weddings, funerals, picnics. The feasts or potlatches survived because of people like my grandparents and their grandparents wanting to maintain our own identity. I had a couple in Heidelberg organized a meeting for me, and a group of about 20 people, the next generation, were at the meeting. And that excited me because this is all new for me. I don't know your system here, so I'm looking for guidance. But at the same time, it's a learning experience for all of us. We will be doing a dinner song that was composed by myself. It'll be a song that will be given to the Haida, Kigeni Haida.
We are expected as Haida hosts to make sure that there's enough food for everybody to be completely fed, but also an abundance of food so that people have food to take home with them. One of the things that was really remarkable about this feast is the way the community came together to gather the food. Having those fresh prawns was absolutely amazing, and what a tremendous demonstration of the wealth of the ocean in bringing those in, and they were danced in. One of the things that happens as a result of the potlatch ban is that there are songs that are missing or songs that were lost as a result, and so then people will compose new songs, and so this was a newly composed song, and then it was used in this way to dance in the food. So I think the speeches play a really important role in honoring that older tradition of transmitting and sharing information orally. And so we didn't used to write things down. At a potlatch, we would have people speak and share that knowledge, and that's how people would learn their history. So if I attended, I might listen to my chief talk about the history of my clan, and that's how I would learn it. And at each potlatch, that would be shared, so I would learn the history of my clan. The clan is really important as a collective. We have hereditary chiefs, for example, but those chiefs don't have any power unless they have the support of their clan. And so having the clan up there, this is an opportunity for us to represent and show who we are, because our identity is deeply, deeply linked to our clan. And so this is our way of sort of standing with our clan and also telling the community, this is our clan, this is who we are.
It is a proud day for us to be Haida.
Local nations are the Haida Nation, the Tlingit, and Tsimshian, and so those nations were all represented there with the different dance groups that came. There were lots of other people from different nations who were there. In a nation, there could be many, many dance groups. things that was really neat for me is that my brother Ben Davidson was able to make it, and so he and his wife Tawny and his 3 youngest children were able to make it over. I think it's really important for the multiple generations to connect. Also witnessing the dancing. I mean, my niece was there beside me when we were performing some of the dances, and it's really important for that to be passed on to other generations.
A lot of the traditional songs are what people might call chants, and they become a medium to go into a different state where masks come out and the dancer becomes that being. And in order to become that being, they need to have the medium of the chant, of the music to get there. And then this song then becomes a way for the audience to connect in that space of going to a different place. Our history is recorded in art, and it's recorded in oral history. And art becomes a way to physically portray that history in potlatch. So it becomes a medium for conveying history, both in song and dance, but also just in the pieces themselves. Robert draws upon a very rich basis of knowledge of Haida culture, Haida oral histories, and narratives, and portrays that history in the art that he creates. And so while the end result is beautiful images, it is really rich and deep with meaning for those who want to look a little further and understand what the pieces are conveying.
I'm at this end. Even though an event is hosted by a person, it tends to be the family and the clan who hosts the potlatch. But if I think about the people in charge of the food, and I think about the people who were in charge of setting up the hall the night before, the cleaning up after, the organizing to figure out the logistics of raising the dance screens, and there were so many different roles that people had to play, and everybody kind of stepped up to it. We have this maybe perception that it is one person, but if I think about the event that took place in Heidelberg, there were hundreds of people who played a role in that event. And if it had only been 1 or 2 people, it would never have been able to happen.
I feel the potlatch will survive, and I feel there's enough people who value that system. The Kwagiyut, for example, are still very strong in that. It's getting very strong with the Haida, and all other nations are taking that route. It's also a great place of cleansing. I always feel so clean after hosting an event. I feel enlightened, and maybe that's the inspiration to continually host potlatches. I feel I really enjoy bringing people together.
When I think about what we're doing and why it's so important for us to be there, it's because we now have this opportunity to live our culture as opposed to just remember it. I had a moment when I was at that potlatch that was quite emotional for me. All of these dance groups were performing and people were speaking Haida. And I looked around me and I thought, we're living the culture.